And welcome in Late Kick on the air. It is Tuesday night, December 21st, the year of our Lord, 2021, first day of winter. We are training headlong through bowl season. We got Christmas coming up. I'm on the road. I'm actually, even though I'm in the studio right now, at home down in Georgia because we put together a very special treat. The PAs have been hard at work. Producer Jesse Collin, I've even done some digging. We've been hard at work doing what you guys have asked for quite a while. We have never put together best of shows. We have never dug through the archives because we got here and immediately had to start ground running. It was a skeleton crew. So we really never had time to compile it. Well, now we have. And so what we're going to do tonight, and we're going to do it Thursday night too, we're going to bring you some stuff that even I had forgotten about. Some of the stuff's from this year on the Renaissance Tour. Some stuff's from a couple of years ago, but it's all really good stuff. We just basically went and found our most popular stories, our most popular segments. And the reason why I want to do this right now ahead of the playoffs instead of waiting until the end of the season is because I know we have a ton of new viewers. We got some folks, and credit to you and thank you for this, that are brand new just within the last few months. Our audience keeps increasing 5%, 7%, 10% per month. So some of you have never heard these stories. In fact, a lot of you, statistically, have never heard these stories. So here's what I wanted to do tonight. Let's just dive in. We called this year the Renaissance Tour for a reason. Because when we went on the road, we knew that we were going to have full stadiums again, and we were going to have a recharged college football again, and it was going to be a lot like we missed it back in the day. Renaissance, thus being spoken about. And it was the Renaissance Tour, because we were in a different city every week. About week 8 or week 9, I make my way out to Waco, Texas. This game ends in Oklahoma being upset by Baylor. Now, you probably remember that. But there was also a very interesting story that went right along with that. So we're going to play a couple of stories here back to back. One is from this season. One is from the 2017 College Football National Championship game. Some things that you don't see if you just turn on the game, but if you're associated with the show, you get to see because we like to peel the curtain back as often as we can. So take a listen.
I am not a big memorabilia guy. I just don't collect a lot of things. And that goes up to and including today. But I have something. I didn't really realize that I had it. Didn't ever look at it as memorabilia until I was rummaging around through my stuff last time I was at home in Columbus. And I realized, you know what? I need to talk about this. So we haven't done an all-access story in about a month. And a lot of you hit me up, a couple of you in particular, every week and say, when is the next all-access story? Well, it's tonight. Right now, as a matter of fact. The all-access stories are just... That's exactly what they are, behind-the-scenes stories from covering games. So let me take you back to 2017. I'm in Columbus, Georgia. I'm working at WLTZ NBC 38. That is the local NBC affiliate there. It was a golden era, to say the least, to be covering college football in that market. You're covering Georgia, you're covering Auburn, and you're covering Alabama, and the CSU Cougars club football team. So Cougars to the side, you're talking about Georgia, Bama, and Auburn. And think about what 2017 did. When I say golden era, you have the Gus Malzahn fiasco, soap opera, whatever you want to call it, and you have them go to LSU and lose, and everyone thinks he's going to be fired, and then they come back home 5 weeks later, and he beats number 1 Georgia, and he beats number 1 Alabama, and so all of this is happening right in our backyard. Auburn goes to Atlanta, but not before Malzahn and his representation push Auburn up against a wall and say, give us a new deal, and they verbally agree to it, and then they go get beat in the SEC championship game where Georgia atones for their loss, and so Georgia's going to the playoffs, and Alabama gets to go to the playoffs too. Best case scenario for anyone who is covering college football in Columbus, Georgia. So half of the college football playoff is made up of teams that we cover. So Georgia goes out to the Rose Bowl. They win that classic in overtime. I'm sitting in the press box in the New Orleans Superdome. I'm watching that game because we've got Bama versus Clemson in the Sugar Bowl, a rematch of last year's title game. Alabama wins that one, which sets up the absolute dream scenario. You could work in Columbus, Georgia, 500 years. How often are you going to have 2 of your local teams playing a national championship game in your backyard in Atlanta, Georgia? You got Auburn. You got over there, who has had an incredible season and ups and downs all over the place. Then you got Georgia and Alabama go to the playoff, and they're playing in the national championship game in Atlanta. So easily, the high water mark of my admittedly fairly young career was that season and then that night. But that doesn't have anything to do with memorabilia. Here's where the whole memorabilia angle comes into question. We're standing on the sideline. It's overtime. Tua gets sacked. The second and Ackworth, Georgia to go. And then 2nd and 26 happens, and Devontae Smith catches the ball right across the field from me. And so it's chaos. It's total bedlam. Your mind can't process fully what's happening. And so we're on the field. This is actually, Colin is rolling the footage that I just pulled out the iPhone and started shooting. Didn't even have a camera in my hand at the moment. And so all this is happening. Just absolute mayhem. And it's that way. It's like when you're riding a roller coaster and you're going down the first big hill. It's kind of that feeling, but it's for about 10 minutes. And you just don't really know what to do. And you're trying to absorb it and you're trying to take it all in. And so I also got buddies back home that if I go to these games, they ask, hey, if my team wins, can you get me some confetti? Can you get me some of those newspapers, the commemorative newspapers they pass around? You can never get the T-shirts or the hats. So I'm walking around knowing full well that I got to hightail it to the Georgia locker room because I have to gather sound. I got to get into both of them because we cover both teams. So I'm looking for newspapers, and I can't find any. But I see something else on the ground, and I pick it up, and I'm putting it in my backpack, and I'll just sort it out later. So I go into the Georgia locker room. Some of the most impressive stuff you'll ever see. Those guys just having their absolute heart ripped out of their chest, manning up, looking you dead in your eyes, and doing as many interview minutes as you need them to do. So it was impressive just on the surface, being in the Georgia locker room and being around a lot of guys that I don't think people appreciated how hard it was going to be to replace, to be honest with you. You just assume, hey, we're recruiting five-star guys, so it'll be easy. No, I would argue you still hadn't replaced some of those guys. But anyway, so then we get back over to the Bama locker room. We get sound out of the Alabama locker room, press conferences and whatnot. 2 hours go by. I only have an hour's drive home, so we didn't leave there until way late in the night. And we're doing stand-up stuff on the field afterwards. And so I dig in my bag to find something, and I remember, there's this thing that I picked up on the field. Let me see what that was. It's the play sheet for Brian Dable, who is the current offensive coordinator at Alabama, and it is the offensive play sheet, front and back, including that very memorable Seattle play. There are many audibles on the back of this thing. For the 2nd and 26 game-winning, national championship-winning touchdown from Tagovailoa to Devontae Smith. Now, I asked some dude who is big in the memorabilia world months later, hey, you know what I got? And I told him. And I think he may actually be a Bama guy. He had to sit down for a second, start fanning himself essentially, and gives me some number that, to be honest with you, I don't believe, but he gives me some number that would be worth. Now, you will have to pry this out of my cold, dead hands. I'm not giving this thing away. I'm not selling it. In fact, if anyone at the University of Alabama or wherever Brian Dable is today is watching, it's probably in about the safest hands that it could possibly be. But I didn't even look at it as memorabilia. To me, memorabilia is like a signed helmet or a signed football, maybe a bag of confetti. I remember the first time we went to a championship game, Clemson, well, it wasn't the first one, but when Clemson first won their title game, I had guys offering me money to get them bags of confetti. That's garbage. You know that, right? That's just cut up garbage paper that's colored. But nonetheless, it was important. So you never know what kind of price someone puts on something. But here's what I can promise you. There is only one of these play sheets out there, and there's only one time you're ever going to walk someone off 2nd and 26 in the national championship game, and that is the sheet that the play came off of. Listen to that laminate. And it sits right here in my hand, and I was fanning myself in the control room beforehand because it makes a good substitute as a fan. But yeah, that's my best piece of memorabilia, and in a lot of ways, one of the only pieces of memorabilia. I got that, and I got a box full of dozens and dozens of credentials from games with the final scores written on the back of them. That is the extent of my memorabilia collection.
This weekend was both one of the greatest weekends in college football that I've experienced and one of the worst weekends in terms of travel. I could not get a rental car because Dallas was out. The entire city of Dallas, it might as well be an island you can't get off of right now. I know people who are still stuck there. So there are no rental cars in Dallas. Oh well, man has faced tougher challenges. So I flew into Austin. Beautiful city, right? So I flew in Friday, and I'm going to drive up to Dallas Friday night. This is fine, Colin, right? So there I am, puttering along a little bit faster than I should have been going, but certainly within the realm of what those cars can handle. And there goes the entire sidewall of my tire. When I say the tire blew, I do not mean I ran over a nail. I mean the entire sidewall of the tire blew to the point where there's a hole big enough in it you can stick your arm in. And I don't even care how much you work out. Your arm would go in the hole on the side of that tire. I am on I-35 North. It is Waco, Texas. It is the middle of the night. And there's not a light to be found. I don't know if you know this about Waco, but it gets really dark there at night. Suspiciously dark. I would say darker maybe than it should have been. And so there I am. I got a suitcase on the side of I-35. The iJosh is propped up on the suitcase with the flashlight on, and I am changing a rental car tire. Now I got lucky because there was a spare tire in the rental car. A lot of times, as you guys know who travel a lot, they don't normally have rentals with spare tires. So I get it changed. But I didn't end up having it the worst because, as I told you, Southwest has like a quarter to half of its flights canceled right now. So last night, I am in the Southwest terminal at Dallas Love. There are like 2 people in the security line to get in the airport. It was a ghost town. It was very weird because it's easy to get in. I go in like 2 seconds. But then you get in the terminal and it's wall to wall. There are people in there that are asleep on the ground, and I figure, I didn't see any thunderstorms. Maybe there's bad weather somewhere. Nope, no bad weather. There are some extenuating circumstances, and that's as far as I'll go because someone's going to politicize this. But there's some things happening in the aviation world right now that have caused a lot of people to not show up for work. There were 2 flights that got out of that place last night. One of them went to New Orleans, and the other one came to Nashville, Tennessee. And so I waved goodbye as I took off from Dallas to several people I know still there. As we speak tonight, they're still there. Won't get out of there at least until tomorrow. I talked to a couple who deserve a ton of praise. Number one, because they're getting married on a Sunday in the fall. And number 2, they were at serious risk of not making it to their own wedding. And so I hope they made it. I was talking to the guy and the girl last night. I hope they made it. But either way, bless you for not scheduling a Saturday wedding. Can you imagine? There are people out there suffering, guys. And by suffering, I mean there were people at weddings yesterday when all this stuff was going on in college football. So if you got to witness it, consider yourself among the blessed and the wise. Oh, good stuff. I'm telling you, I can't help but smile when I'm listening to those stories. But I also can't help but smile because had you told me, let's say back in 2017, when you told me back then, as I'm holding an iPhone in my hand to record footage, and when we've got a total bubblegum and paperclip operation going on down in Columbus, and even that is grandizing things a little bit too much. If you told me we would have a partner, like Academy Sports and Outdoors on board, at that point, I would have told you you're crazy. But yet we have a full partnership with Academy, and it is right here at Christmas time. So again, I want to just get this out of the way. If you need anything, forget about tailgating or just your fan gear. It goes well beyond that. You walk up and down the aisles at an Academy. If you scroll up and down the screen on academy.com, you have everything you're looking for. If you live a minimalist lifestyle like me, you have more than everything you could possibly look for. But also, and especially this time of year, we're grateful because we don't have to beg for financing. We don't have to beg for resources. We don't ever walk in here and worry if the lights are going to be on. Outside in the hallway, it's a different story. But in the studio, lights are always on. It is because of our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors. They take care of us. So we just humbly ask around this time every show that you show your appreciation, as we do, and you take care of them. Got $15 you want to drop on a shirt? Got like $100 you want to drop on a grill? Anything in between. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate when you guys show me the receipts and you email me. I used to shop here, but now I shop at Academy. I love that stuff. I just forward it right on to them, and they love that too. So thank you so much, Academy Sports and Outdoors, for all of your, as I've been calling it now, life needs, both football, basketball, your backyard, whatever. Academy takes care of us. Thank you so much for taking care of them. So we wanted to get to another story here. This is one from also that 2017 season. This is well before I'm at 24/7 Sports. It's well before I've ever been on CBS Sports, but it's when we are first putting together the concept of what Late Kick ended up becoming. And we're first going to games every week. Now back then, boy, it was tough. We had to execute using very creative measures to get credentialed to some games. But we finally got to go to a Notre Dame game because Georgia played up there in 2017. So we had an excuse to go. Never been able to go. Total bucket list moment. But this was not, as I said, the CBS days. This is not where you just call up Adam Stanko and say, hey, we need a couple of nights in a hotel. Okay, Ritz-Carlton? Yeah, sounds good. First class, Delta? Okay, that's fine. This was not that. This was, we didn't even have a seat on a crop duster airplane. We couldn't even afford rental cars. We had to take our own cars. We couldn't even expense the gas. but the memory was worth it in our minds. And so me and a couple of buddies who also happened to work at the news station at the time down there in Columbus, Georgia, we gear up after a Friday night of shooting high school football, and we are headed to South Bend, Indiana, which to us was essentially the North Pole, to go to the Georgia-Notre Dame game. There is no rest, there is no sleep. It is a great story, and I hope you enjoy it.
I was working in the local news world down in Columbus, Georgia. It was 2017, and I was doing high school sports on Fridays. I was a news anchor down there, was the sports director at WLTZ. And so I'm doing high school football on Fridays. I cover college football on Saturdays. Then we do what would become Late Kick. At the time, we called it Football Nightly down south. And we're doing that on Sundays. Same time we do this show now, 8 Eastern, 7 Central. So let me hit you with this little itinerary. I want you to think this one out loud with me. September, what was it, Colin? The 20th or the 21st? It was week 3 of the 2017 season. Georgia has a road trip to Notre Dame. Now, we're lucky in Columbus because we could reasonably get credentialed to Georgia games, Auburn games, and Alabama games, Florida State games, and Florida games, and Clemson games, and South Carolina games. We're just right there where we could justifiably apply to all of them. And we got credentialed to all those. So it's a perfect spot to be. So we get approved for the Notre Dame game, Georgia at Notre Dame. Once in a lifetime trip. It hardly ever happens. Those out-of-conference games, remember, everyone's scheduling big out-of-conference now. They hadn't been doing it for a long time down south. And so we get credentialed. Here's the problem. The problem is I have to be back by Sunday. I mean, that game's a 7:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff in South Bend, Indiana. Got to be back 24 hours later. It's a 12-hour trip each way. How are we going to pull it off? So I ask one of the meteorologists there, henceforth to be named Bear, and another PA, henceforth to be named Minion. I ask them, if you can come and help split the driving duties, I'll get you credentialed. So they say yes, and I get them credentialed. So here we go. We are doing high school football on Friday night. We anchor it. We get off air at 11:34 and 30 seconds. That's the exact time we got off air when we were doing high school football. Go home, get about 1 or 2 hours of sleep, maybe max. And then we load up the equipment, and here we are, taking off from Columbus, Georgia, which for those unfamiliar is about an hour south of Atlanta. And we're taking off to go to South Bend, Indiana. No rest, no stops, no hotel, no nothing. It's roughly a 12-hour straight shot, and that's going from Columbus through Birmingham, through Nashville, through Louisville, through Indianapolis, on to South Bend. It's like 65 most of the way until you get to Indiana. And so you got some game day traffic that stretch it. So let's call it a 13-hour trip. We got there at about 5 p.m. Game kicks off in 2.5 hours. And so we get in Notre Dame Stadium, which in and of itself is just an experience. You get to go see Touchdown Jesus. You get to go and see all the things that you've only seen on TV if you grew up in rural Georgia. So that was awesome. So then I pull out the iJosh. Not this one. This one's new, but the old iJosh. I'm in Notre Dame Stadium. If you don't remember this, half of the state of Georgia made this trip. Every one of them wearing red. So I told Jesse this morning, welcome back Jesse, by the way, not to be confused with Welcome Back Cotter. That would probably be a better show. Welcome Back Jesse would be an even better movie. And I said, Jesse, I got some iJosh footage. Can you roll it? He said, you send it, I'll roll it. So he's got some. So the first piece of footage I want to show you, I sneak up in Notre Dame Stadium. I go up into like the second level, and the scene was crazy. There was like a mob scene outside. As Georgia's team arrives, there's wall-to-wall red. This is not a home game in Athens, mind you, and this is not some rando side entrance for the visiting team. This is just the main entrance at Notre Dame Stadium, and you can see a splattering of green and maybe a splattering of blue out there, but by and large, it was just red, and it was a crazy scene outside. So what I wanted to do is get there early, soak as much of it in as possible, but remember how this game went. So again, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us, and you hope to see a close game. This is Jake Fromm's first start. Quarterback for Georgia goes down week before. Jake Fromm inserted as a true freshman. His first start is on the road at Notre Dame. Georgia ends up winning the thing 20-19, and every time there's a commercial break, you do what I'm doing right now if you're watching on YouTube. You try and capture as much of the scene as you can. Post-game, you're trying to capture as much of the scene as you can. No one was in a hurry to leave this field after this game. As you can see, again, if you're watching on YouTube. Dudes standing outside, just walking around the end zone, going down to the student section, going down to their visitors section. But you know what it was like? And I thought about this several times. I remember some of my thoughts during the game. When I was a kid and I was growing up, there were like really old VHS tapes of like old Georgia games or old Bama games, several of Bryant's games in the 60s and the 70s, and you'd watch them. And these are people who in some cases have long since passed away before I've been born. Obviously the games are in another era, but I watched it like if USC were to come into Legion Field in Birmingham, Sam Cunningham in tow, and you're watching that game. That doesn't even feel like it's the same reality you're living. This is another world. I felt during that game like I was kind of in a VHS. Not in a literal sense, but I felt like I'm part of something right in this moment. There I am on TV in the orange shirt. I'm on the field taking part in something this moment that people who are my age at the moment will show kids 30, 40 years from now, hey, this is when Georgia went to Notre Dame. This was a rare thing. And so I felt that. So we were in no hurry to leave. So after the game, we go to Brian Kelly's press conference. We go to Kirby Smart's press conference. But then when we get done, as is usually the case, I'm never in a hurry to leave the stadium because I don't like sitting in gridlock traffic. So what I like to do a lot, and this is a pattern I do every time, but especially at Notre Dame, what I did is I just go back out in the crowd. I go up in the bleachers. I take a couple of laptops with me, and the iJosh in this case, and I just sit. And that's exactly what I did. This shot right here is an empty Notre Dame stadium. What other walk of life could you find yourself in this very position at that very moment? That's what I'm thinking as I'm shooting this. And so sit there, watch some games wrap up. You're watching highlight footage from the day, trying to start to get your show put together for the next night because of what comes next. So you mosey your way back to your car. We got out of there about 1 or 1:30, straight shot all the way back. The meteorologist and I, Bear and I, we switch places. Minion, who is probably not out of high school at this point, sleeps the whole way. 12 hours, sleeps the whole way. Curled up like, I'm not going to use that terminology. He's curled up like something in the back, and he just sleeps the whole way. So we get back about lunchtime, a little after lunchtime in Columbus, and there is no time to sleep because we got to stack the show. We got to have a certain standard met too. So we stack that show, we do the show on Sunday night, and then I go into complete recluse mode. I hibernate all of Monday. It was like Sunday happened, Tuesday happened, Monday, just a rumor. Don't really even know that anything occurred that day. But it was a very fun trip. And so, like, I'm thinking it's only 3 or 4 years ago now, but I still look back on it, still talk about it all the time. I mean, the buddies I'm discussing right now will probably light up my phone before I even get off air. But I would encourage you guys, so now that obviously we've got things opening back up a little bit, I have a lot of folks ask me, should I take this trip? Should I take that trip? I don't know what your finances are. I don't know what your schedule is. I'm saying if you could even reasonably swing some of this stuff, always buy the memory. The memory is what's worth its weight in gold. Because we had to foot the bill for some of this stuff. Even though I was working in media, it was not exactly a trip that the station was ready to fund fully. And that's its own separate story that we can't tell on air, statute of limitations and all. But I don't regret for a second paying for any of it. What I very, very much am happy we did is you got the memory to take home with you. So if you are a fan of a program this year, if you're an LSU fan, and you guys are playing at UCLA, go. If you can go, go. I mean, if local ordinances allow you to, go. I mean, if you're one of these teams that gets to play like Oregon, go into Ohio Stadium, go into Ohio State, go. Go see the horseshoe. You don't ever know if you're going to be able to do that again. I always encourage it. And if you can find a couple of quarters to rub together to pay for gas, make it happen. And I would also tell you this, you never know what kind of benevolent souls may be out there in your immediate social circle who are well enough off financially, who themselves regret not taking more trips when they were younger, and they may step up and they may say, psst, handshake. It's not because you're a 4-star recruit. That's because I want you to be able to take this trip. Spend that money wisely.
That was an experience. I mean, I had only my experiences down south as sort of a cross comparison of what to expect when I went up north for a game for the first time. They delivered. Notre Dame took care of us. I really appreciate it. It's still one of my favorite road trips. Even now where we're going to the biggest games every week, that Notre Dame hosting Georgia afternoon, that still stands out. Really appreciate it. I think I told you in the story, I just kind of sat in the stadium for a little while afterwards. Still got it on my iPhone, just sitting there, Didn't know if I was ever going to be able to go there again. The future was very uncertain. My contract was coming up. I didn't know what was going to happen. So that was really fun. I also had the guys pull this out of the archives. There wasn't nearly as much dust on this because it's only from about last August. Late August, as a matter of fact. The season is approaching. Here comes the Renaissance season. I think we went to Charlotte for week 1. But it's so funny how little we knew. And even at the time, knowing how little we knew, we did a little pontificating, you know how rarely I use that word, about what we could expect in week 1 and how much unexpected there was coming at us in week 1. Boy, we still had no idea. Take a look, take a listen.
I'm looking forward to seeing the length and size of Clemson's wide receiver core. All those guys are 6'3", 6'4". I'm getting very, very excited about the potential of that offense. I'm looking forward to seeing them against Georgia, especially against a younger secondary, maybe a more unproven secondary, and looking in after a half of football. Are we looking at Clemson and saying, do they look like 2018? Who's going to stop them? We always come out of week 1 saying that about someone who was in a tight point spread game and they end up blowing it open and saying, who's going to beat them? I'm looking forward to seeing if that is the Clemson Tigers. I'm looking forward to seeing D'Eriq King get another shot. We saw him laying on the field, wincing in pain in a bowl game. I don't think anyone at that moment looked at week 1 against Alabama and said, oh, he'll be ready. He'll be good to go by then. And so he's worked his tail off, D'Eriq King has, and he's gotten himself in position where he's got the full trust and confidence of his entire coaching staff and offense. And so they're going to get to play against Alabama. If they beat them, it's the biggest story in the early portion of college football. If they lose, but it's competitive, you still got D'Eriq King and the Miami Hurricanes with a chance to turn that division race in the ACC on its ear. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I absolutely cannot wait to see North Carolina potentially be able to turn the ACC in its entirety on its ear. Everyone expects North Carolina to be good this year. Everyone expects a solid effort out of them. Everyone's got them ranked somewhere between 8 and 18, let's say. But no one's predicting them to win the ACC. But they got a shot to do it. They're going to be in the conversation for the first time. They've got, obviously, the offensive prowess, but for the first time, theoretically, they have the rotational and depth aspect of their defensive front that you need to compete in games like that, in settings like that. I cannot wait to watch North Carolina this year. I cannot wait to walk through, well, how should I put that? I'll just say it. I cannot wait to walk through home tailgate atmospheres this year and count how many different smells I can recognize. When you go to LSU, it's crazy. It's like a rainforest of smell. When you go to some of these big-time venues, the smells outside are almost enough to fill you up, even though you actually haven't put any food in your mouth. And one of the added benefits is when we walk through tailgate atmospheres, like I walk through LSU, I get 10 different meals put in my face. You could eat forever down there, and they don't even have to know you. But when they recognize you, that's all the better. I was talking to some of our friends at North Carolina today, and they said, just let us know. Just let us know when you'll be in town. Don't have to worry about anything else. Just let us know when you'll be here. Here's the parking lot we tailgate in. Here's what time we get there. All the pertinent details will be sent from our people to your people. It is so great walking through those tailgate atmospheres. The smells, the sights, the sounds, the music. Oh, and by the way, the actual scene itself being back. I can't wait to see that. I cannot wait to see stadiums start to fill up. If you do the time lapse and you normally watch them fill up, and we all got used to seeing full stadiums and then you didn't get them last year, man, I can't wait to watch that time lapse happen in real time of stadiums filling back up. If you could ever stand on the field at a venue like Tiger Stadium that we're watching right now, if you could be on the venue when those places start to fill up and then teams come out of the tunnel for warm-ups, that's when you get your first sense of what kind of crowd you have on your hands that day. Because you get a little bit of a roar that is sustained for a second when the home team comes out for warm-ups. And so if it's a yawn and a little golf clap, this is going to be a sleeper. But sometimes it's not. And I think this year, a lot of times it won't be. Watching that stadium full up past 25%, past 50%, past 75%, and finally seeing a full house again, cannot wait for that. I can't wait to be standing in a tunnel or standing outside a gate and for the first time to hear off in the distance the faint sound of a police siren and then 2 police sirens and then 10 of them, because that's the sound of state troopers, and behind them are about 5 or 6 charter buses, and you got Alabama pulling in, or you got Texas A&M, you got USC pulling in. That scene is awesome. And it's made even more awesome when you've got a sea of humanity that has to part for those state troopers and those buses to come through. But from our point of view, that is the last calm before the storm. Once those sirens get louder, you know that it's going to be sensory overload, pedal all the way to the floor for the next 7 or 8 hours until they turn the lights out in that stadium, long after the game's ended, long after the press conference has ended, long after the last food has been taken out of the press box before you got back up there in time. That I cannot wait to see. I can't wait to be driving down the interstate and see lines of cars for miles and miles. Traffic at college football games, I'm going to try and keep this promise, is something that I will not be complaining about this year. Because I'll tell you what was very eerie. I chose not to go to games last year because we didn't have access to the players, first off. We couldn't have field access. Second off, and thirdly, it was just weird. I was talking to some of our team site guys who cover the games every week. I think it was Travis Ryer of Bama Online who told me he went to the LSU Bama game and left his hotel and just drove through town, and it was a game day in Baton Rouge, Bama in town, and he said you wouldn't have even known there was a football game happening until you got right up to the stadium because it was that uncrowded, relatively speaking. No more of that. Give me the crowds, give me the traffic, give me the gridlock, give me the horn honking. You give me all that. If it means we get all that atmosphere back, you give me all that. I can't wait to be on the interstate and start betting over under amount of car tags and amount of window flags I'm going to see. You don't have to wait to get to game day or wait to get to the gate or wait for kickoff to start getting some action on stuff. You absolutely, if you're anywhere in the vicinity of a major college football game, are going to see car flags all over the place. And one of my favorite hallmark traditions on the road is to have some action on how many car flags of certain teams we're going to see. I mean, I've made a lot of money that way. I've lost my fair share of money that way. And if you want some prop bets on whether you can hit the over-under on amounts of profanity you're going to see on bumper stickers, that's always a plus too. I cannot wait to see the increased level of experience on these rosters in college football this year and what it means. We put out the numbers. I think it was Bill Connolly that put them out as part of his S&P Plus release the other day. Whatever the average returning experience number is for a college football team at this level, it's around 64%. He put out the conference averages, and all of them are way, way above 64. The closest one was 68. Some of them are in the 70s and 80s. Some of them have their entire teams virtually returning. What does that mean? I got my theory. I think it means lower scoring games. I think it means a higher level of football being played. I just think it means lower margin for error for the top rated teams. But it could mean anything. It could mean that it's a net benefit to no one and the cream rises just as it always has. But nonetheless, I can't wait to see how that plays out. I can't wait for week one to where we see what kind of insane upset gets thrown out. I mean, I remember, last year it wasn't a huge upset, but watching Louisiana just go into Ames, Iowa, and handle Iowa State, the eventual Fiesta Bowl champion, Iowa State. But there have been some much crazier upsets than that. The App State over Michigans of the world. Is that coming? You got a lot of experience. So you got a lot of staffs out there who have been able to tinker with this and specialize game plan that. How many, or if we even have one, where is that huge upset coming? I've never met someone that possesses the skill to find me that upset. I've met a lot of folks who lose their you-know-what just like they do in March Madness trying to find where that 16 or 15 over a 1 or 2 is, but no one's got any skill in actually finding me the upset. I'll put it out there now, actually. You guys want to tell me where the biggest upset in America is coming week one? If you tell me accurately, I may have a little something for you.
So then, after all those upsets, comes the inevitable knee-jerk reaction. And we've always stuck to the adage, more games are lost than won in week one. And a lot of people had to learn that lesson the hard way with their wallets this year, but that was really fun. We knew we were in for it, though. I mean, if you didn't think a Renaissance season was on deck before that, boy, you watched those upsets happen, and it didn't stop there, obviously. This show has to stop here, but we will continue this entire theme again on Thursday. And if you guys like this, we got barrels and barrels of content that we can unload on you sometime in the spring. In the rare event that we take the V word, vacation, around here. I kind of forgot what that is, but if we ever do that, we got a lot of this stuff. So I'll be interested to get your comments below. I appreciate you guys watching the show. A lot of this is really good for road trips. I know a lot of you guys listen via podcast, and leave us a 5-star review over there, even if you don't. Head over there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. This is great road trip type listening. Long form road trip type listening. I know I like it from the other shows I listen to, so I thought we'd put some in the can for you here. Appreciate you guys so much. Appreciate our PAs along with producer Jesse, Director Colin for getting this together. Until next time, I'm Josh Pate. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your evening, and God bless.